Hey there, I'm Hillary DeCesar, and you're about to listen to episode number 32 of the Silver Lined Relaunch. Today I'm going to take you on a roller coaster of emotions, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. A heart-wrenching story, but the most inspirational heroine. The conversation starts off light, but soon you will understand why my friend Kelley Brenninger is remarkable. You will hear how quickly a moment in time can change the trajectory of one's life. But by going through grief and not around it, she found her new way. A way paved with gratitude, meditation, and feeling the energy that's always there even when somebody leaves this physical realm. And the biggest silver lining? Kelley came to the conclusion that she, as well as all of us, are meant for bigger things while on this earth. And she founded Lucky Day Animal Rescue in Colorado. This combined her passion for animals with her love of philanthropy. And she is now leading the charge as president of this amazing nonprofit. So keep your heart open while listening to this episode. It will have you realizing, as Kelley says, there is no set way to deal with grief. But even in the darkest moments, authentic gratitude can make all the difference. And now, our conversation begins, and so does this amazing story. You're listening to the Silver Lined Relaunch, and I'm your host, Hillary DeCesar, award-winning entrepreneur and transitional coach. Each week, I'll invite you to tune into inspirational stories, revealing how you too can turn ordinary experiences into the extraordinary. Feeling stuck? I'll share step-by-step strategies to fuel your ability to experience a life where silver linings are both abundant and possible. Dog that already has a name, do you have to keep the dog's name?
No. In the beginning, I thought you did, but you so don't. You can change it to anything. In fact, if they come to you and they have any negative connotations with that name, I suggest totally change it. Like if it was Oscar, don't go with Oliver, go with Bentley. Like really change it because you don't want them associating with anything negative. Or if you just want a name that resonates with you, you have to like the name. You're the one using it.
Okay.
So I always tell everybody, change it.
My
Treat, a high value treat like liver treat, chicken, and just say the new name and treat, and they get a new name.
What's funny, my ex-husband
You can
rescued a
rename
dog.
him too.
Rescued a dog, and the dog's name was my mom's name, Judy. And I said, you can't have your dog be named Judy. So he did change it to Stella, but it was really funny for a while there. And every once in a while, I would talk to the dog. I'd be like, Judy, Judy, Judy. Okay. So and we're not sure if we're going to use what we just used as a little like segue. If you're catching us midway, you are in the conversation as it's taking place. This is the Silver Lined Relaunch, and we are so excited today to have Kelley Brenninger with us. And Kelley and I go way back. She actually has I've heard her name for years and years and years because she's a dear friend of my brother's from college. And then we were able to see each other recently again, went on this fantastic hike, started talking about life and about relaunches. And it just seemed full circle to have Kelley on here with everything that she's been through. We're going to hear her story. And so, Kelley, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Hillary.
I love that you're here. And what's even better for those that are watching this on video, she has got this little poochin on her lap, which is a poodle and what's the chin for?
Japanese chin.
Japanese chin. AKA the dog's name is actually Arturo, but she does rescue. And we're going to talk all about that as well with, is it dogs only?
No, We are
Okay.
all
Okay. So we're going to talk more about that also. But if you guys could see this dog, oh my
part
God,
of
if
my
you,
healing relaunch.
oh,
Fosters like this. Come
oh,
on.
oh God, you guys, this is a dog and it needs a couple surgeries. And I
In a
think
new
at the
home,
end, we're going to, yeah, and a new home. And we're going to, how old is it right now?
4 months.
4 months. Oh, you guys, I'm telling you, this is the pup for you. All right. So, Kelly, I got to just take a deep breath because you have truly had probably what I would view as one of the hardest relaunches that I've talked to in terms of friends as well as others that have come onto the show. And the reason that when we were hiking and talking that we really felt it was necessary to have you on now is that you're contemplating writing a book on it and you're talking more and more about the story. Can you share a little bit about what really what's happened to you?
Well, first of all, I wear my heart on my sleeve. So forgive me if I get emotional. It might not, but it's always a possibility. So I was fortunate enough to meet the man of my dreams, my soulmate, my best friend. Like he and I were just meant for each other. And we were married for 20 amazing years. And he was an incredible, amazing, like I can't
Mm,
even express what an incredible skier and person
mm,
he was. His name is Hansi.
mm,
And he was a ski racer, but also a teacher, and he was like a ballet dancer on skis. I'm not
mm,
kidding. People
mhm,
would comment all the time. He had the cream of the crop clients, and it was he could ski better than he could walk. So just to preface, so he it was his passion. He loved skiing. So he took my son, who was 12 at the time, to Park City for the first ever boys trip, and it was just the two of them going skiing, and he was on cloud nine. He called me from the chairlift and he was like, Bluebird Day, best snow. I am so happy. And we had a great breakfast and dinner. He
mm.
was a big foodie, so all about food. And he said, I am so excited to have this day with Max, and we'll be home for Sunday night roast tomorrow because I had been on a work trip in New Orleans and my daughter had actually been in Cuba on a trip. So we were all reuniting the next day. So we got off the, very loving, love you, great. Get off the phone. And then I don't know, time is a little tricky, but not long after my son calls me and he says, Mom, dad's hit a tree. And I was like, what? Like Hans doesn't hit trees.
Mm.
Like he was pushed off the side of a cliff. I won't go into details, but he said, it's bad. And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay. Well, Emily and I will come because I thought maybe he broke his leg and my 12-year-old can't, So we were already packed from our trips. And I grabbed a bunch of loose fitting clothes for Hansi for his broken leg. Right. So
Mm.
we get in the car and we start driving. And my son calls me back and he's like, Mom, it's bad. It's really bad. And so in my head, I'm thinking, worst case, he's going to lose his leg and be the most amazing
Right.
one-legged skier on earth. Like this is Hans. Like he's the
Mm,
salt of the earth. His legs
mm.
were solid. He's strongest person you'd ever meet. I'm like, don't worry, Max. We're on our way. We're coming to you. There was no flight, so we had to drive. It was an 8-hour drive. And he's like, no, Mom, it's really bad. So
And
we'll bring you
Max
weekend.
is how old at that point?
12.
He's 12. Right. So this was approximately about 4 years ago.
Years ago.
That's what
Yeah,
you
it
said.
was
Yeah.
just before his 13th birthday, but he
Yeah.
was
Oh.
12. It was 2016. So my sweet daughter Emily and I are in the car driving, and I'm thinking, got to get to Park City to help Max and Hans, and we'll meet him at the hospital. All of a sudden, an officer calls me, and he says, "Ma'am, pull over." And I don't know, but there's a moment in life where I just got my back up. Like I just felt chills. And I was like, don't call me ma'am, first of
Mm,
all. I
mm,
got really,
right.
and I go, and I am not pulling over. I need to get to my son. And he's like, no, I need you to pull over. And I said, I am not pulling over. And the next thing you know, my sweet 12-year-old baby boy's voice gets on the phone. He grabbed the phone out of the officer's hand And he said, "Mom, Dad didn't make it." And I went into shock. Like, to hear it from my son, and in hindsight, Max didn't want a stranger giving me
Mm,
this news. So even
mm,
as a 12-year-old
mm.
child who's just watched his dad die, he knew in his heart he had to be the man and be the one to
Mm.
tell his mom and his sister. And we were on Bluetooth, so it was speaker. So I'm
Oh.
driving 80 miles an hour down the highway, and I hear this sound, and it's earth shattering, and I never heard it before. And I'm like, what is that noise? And it took me a minute to compute, and I realized it was my 15-year-old daughter sitting next to me, just wailing because
Oh
she
my God.
was just releasing this the grief of this news and the shock and panic. And it kind of shocked me back into, I don't even know if reality would
Mm,
make sense, but just, okay, I have to get to Max. He cannot lose his mom and sister. We
mm,
have to stay safe. And so
mm.
we just kept driving, and I just told her, "You tell me the speed limit and I'll set cruise control," because I didn't trust myself. And we drove to Park City, and we had a kind of an interesting teaching moment on the way up briefly. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just following Google Maps. And so we were out of gas. And so I had to pull in,
Mm.
and I'm in some random town, and I am just foggy. And I flip a U-turn in the middle of this little town, and this guy honks at me and flips me off and is pissed off because I pulled a dick move, honestly.
Mm.
And my daughter was like, ah, and I was like, you know what? 'Cause she was 15 and a half, so she was driver's permit. I said, you know what? Don't ever forget this moment, because
Mm.
when you're driving and somebody does something like I just did,
Mm.
remember, you don't know what led up
Ah,
to that moment. You don't
right.
know
You don't
that
know
they
what there's
just
going through.
heard the most earth-shattering news on life. So
Mm.
she tells me she still remembers that, because she was an up-and-coming driver. So I remember thinking, okay, so we get there. On the way, I call my family, and they're just incredible. My brother, who's my dearest close friend, and my dad were in Hawaii, in
Mm.
Maui. And Hillary, the next thing I know, they're at my hotel room in Park City, Utah.
Mm.
There, my sister and brother-in-law, who I'm super close to, I adore, in they live in Santa Fe. They showed up. I don't even
Everyone
know
was
how,
rallying.
but all
Everyone.
of a sudden
Yeah.
I had all this love around me and all and support. But honestly, the worst was yet to come, because I then was tasked with having to call Hansi's family.
Oh.
And I'm incredibly close to them, and I adore them with all my heart. And to tell a mother that she has just lost her only son, that was her golden trophy, like her prize baby, was the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do. And then I had to tell my sisters, my sister-in-laws, and that moment was just earth-shattering. I've never felt such a deep grief and despair, and it's hard to go from so happy to your world just upside down and shattered in such a split
A short amount of time. I mean, instantaneously. He was there, he was
in a
having fun,
second.
he called you. And the one thing that, and I don't know if you want to go into the details around it, but what struck me is, it wasn't just he got pushed off. He was actually trying to do an act of kindness by, trying to make sure that this person that ended
And
up
just
pushing
show
him.
him, Hillary, show him.
I
So,
mean,
a little bit of the story for anyone listening. He got off the chairlift. They both got off the chairlift at the
mm,
top, a very, very top area. Expert skiers, both of them,
mm,
ready to go down. And my Hansi said, "Max, you got to stop for a photo. This is
mm,
phenomenal. We're on the top of the world." Stop to take a photo of him. And while he's taking a photo, this out of control snowboarder comes flying out of nowhere and knocks Max over. Well, Hansi was a teacher, and such a um, it was so important. He was such a protector. He was a protector of all of us, and so that just sent his father and protection going. And he hated out of control skiers because he had such a deep love of the sport. He didn't want people causing that kind of chaos. So the guy then goes down and knocks over a lady. And so
Mm.
now he's like, I got to go give this guy a what
It's like,
for.
right.
He
Like,
takes off
enough already.
after,
This guy has now just taken out my son. Now he's taken out this woman. Who else is he going to take out next?
and he's out of control, just speed demon. And so Hans takes off after him. And being a World Cup ski racer, he is fast. And so he's gaining on him very quickly. Well, my son is also an exceptional skier growing up in the mountains. So he takes off after his dad. He rounds a bend and sees this guy, this out of control snowboarder, literally push him off a cliff going 60
Mm.
miles an hour and straight into an enormous tree. And it's so like mind-boggling to think his thighs were just tree trunks, like the
Mhm.
strongest thing on his body. And it severed his femoral artery, and he probably had 3 minutes. But he said to Max, first he said, call ski patrol, and then he said, don't leave me. And so Max, incredible, Hillary, stood up and waved, and there was ski patrol, like right there.
Mm.
And so he stayed with Hans while he passed, although he didn't know it at the time. And ski patrol was on, and Flight for Life came. Like Max did everything in his little power.
Mm.
So yeah, he died doing what he loved and also protecting, who he loved. So there's something in that. I know. Yeah,
I mean,
I know, right?
every time I hear it,
It gets
it's
me. I've said it a thousand times.
yeah, and it's beyond, you know, I think that probably everyone listening is just like, you know, mouth open and just the worst of the worst. And it's, only knowing you the way I know you now, I, I, I think it's so fortunate that your kids have you as their mom and this incredibly loving, nurturing, just, female presence that, kind of matriarch now of the family. But it, it was not, you're here now because you've focused on yourself, you focused on your family. How were you able to go from there to where you are right now?
Well, for one, it's definitely been a journey.
Mm.
It's been a journey I did not have a blueprint for. I did not expect, I didn't plan for. So it took creating a new blueprint for sure. It's funny how you said my kids are lucky because I feel like they are the ones that saved me because there were times where I didn't even find joy in being on this planet anymore, but I could never leave my beautiful children and would never. So grateful for that. Interesting about that is time, as I said, is a funny thing. But my brother drove us back to Aspen and to our home, and it was very surreal to be here without Hansi. And I cried a lot. I mean, little soft tears, sobbing tears, full panic attack tears, whole body wrenching tears. Like I cried, I cried and cried and cried. And at one point, my brother said, "You have got to stop crying. You have to pull yourself together for your kids. Like they are watching their mom cry, and it is so hard on them, and you
Mm.
have to stop." And it was one of those moments that I kind of had this epiphany that, oh my God, it's not that I need to stop crying. I need to explain to them what's happening. So I had a very pointed conversation with Emily and Max, and I said, "Look, I am crying because it's the only way I know right now how to release some of this grief. And the grief is so overwhelming that it has to come out. And at the moment, I don't have any other tools to let it out. So right now, tears are what is helping me." And I said, "So when I cry, don't let it scare you. Don't let it worry you. Just know I'm getting a little closer to my healing because this is my release." And I also said, "Look, you don't have to cry. That's my way of releasing grief." Because I think sometimes when you're in this situation, you're expected to act a certain way. And I really believe there's no right or wrong way to release whatever it is you're going through, grief on any level. Like my daughter in the beginning, she was really bottled up. And I was like, we all have to find our own unique ways of processing our emotions and our deep pain. And for me right now it's crying. And I said I will move through it, but you got to hold, so we learn to sort of hold space for each other. So when I cried, they would just sit next to me. They weren't trying to stop the tears or make it better or make it go away. They're just there, just a presence. And I did that for them, more importantly, obviously. Um, Emily is the most deep thinker, beautiful soul, and she is an artist like her dad was an exceptional artist, amongst other things. So she took to writing and is just the most amazing writer. Remind me to share a poem I have on my wall here that she wrote. It is way beyond her years, publishable.
Mm.
She took to art, so she did a lot of artwork, a lot of late nights. That was her way to express. Um, Max had a lot of PTSD, as you can imagine, so we
Oh,
did get him a
I can't even
counselor.
imagine that little boy going through
Little
that.
babe, I just wanted to hold him. He was just it was but he's such his dad that he's remarkable. He's his own person, he's not his dad. He carries a lot of his dad's essence, I should say. So we did get him a counselor, but he didn't want a 12-year boy, he doesn't wanna sit and talk about
Mm.
his dad's death and what happened. He needed a release, so they went golfing, and he taught him how to play the guitar, and he wrote songs, and he cried. He's more a little bit more like me in that sense, is that we would just hold each other and cry. But we also, Hillary, crazy enough, we learned to laugh, and that was also a release. We Our family was so blessed to go spend a year in France. And so we traveled to 11 countries during a year stint, and we did the most fun things. And that memory was so vivid in our minds because it wasn't long before Hansa died. And we would recount. It took a while, wasn't right away,
Mm.
but we would sit around at dinner and talk about funny things that happened in our time overseas. And we found ourselves sometimes laughing almost crazily, like we would just belly laugh almost inappropriately because it was just another way to let some of this pain out and to remember him and to bring him back into our world and to never forget him. So definitely.
You talk about release, and that just happens to be one of the first steps of the relaunch effect of going through any type of major relaunch, right? And for what you went through, there are different ways to release, right? As you said, for you it was the tears, but then the laughs come, and then for others it might be, and I remember when, my mom passed, my brother and I dealt with it very differently. Um, I was much more willing to accept and understand what had happened, and he was pushing back still, like, how could this happen, how could this happen? But whether it's, they talk about stages of grief, and I remember looking at this and I'm like, you can't put anything about losing someone, especially in the way that you lost Hansi, you can't put it into a stages.
Oh, I
It's
call
it
bullshit on those stages all the time and right there with you. There's no right or wrong way. It's just different ways.
A-
Absolutely.
and when I look at even a relaunch, and whatever you're going through, sometimes people need to jump ahead, to go back, to
Mhm.
jump ahead again, and then eventually they've maybe hit those stages. And if
Mhm.
they haven't, as you and I know, and the people out there that have experienced loss, you realize that you eventually are going to go through that part of it, but your journey is definitely unique. Your journey is, you talk about, the purpose of why you're here, and it really is this kind of concept of the cause and the effect, and the cause of something that's happened, but it will lead you to the effect that you can have on yourself, on others around you. And you have just, I mean, I after we spent hours walking that day, I just thought to myself, what an inspiring, like, and the word just seems so not right, right? Inspiring, just, you can be inspired by a lot. But when I think of inspiring and I think of like an inspiring sunset that just is like, it fills you to the bone. I think that that's what, and that's why I said, you really have to write your book. You have to share this because your unique perspective on what's happened can, God forbid, others don't have to go through that type of situation, but we all are going to experience loss. We all know that that is inevitable. You can't avoid it, but you can determine how you're going to handle it when it happens and to have that solid foundation. And I really believe you had so many incredible years with your husband. You had such a deep love. You had, the connection to him allowed in the passing that you're still connected.
Always. Well, I think something you said really resonated with me is that you have, in my personal opinion, you have to go through it. You can't go around it because it's funny how people are. But in the beginning, we were overwhelmed with food and gifts, and people wanted to help. And that's part of the reason I want to write the book, is to help people who are maybe not going through grief, but are trying to support someone that is. And all this stuff would come every day, including alcohol. And one of my closest friends would be like, here's some sleeping pills, and this, some downers to help you numb. And I was like, what?
Mm,
For me, and then I kind of went the other way, where I wouldn't even take an aspirin. I didn't drink any alcohol, no drugs. Like, I just wanted to feel it so that I could get through it. And I just had this feeling that I have to go through this pain, because people for years go around it, and then grief has a funny way of presenting itself again. And I feel like if you don't go through it, acknowledge it, feel it, experience it, move on, it's just gonna keep showing up again and keep showing up again. And so I was prepared to go through the middle so that I could get to the other side. And
feel
it was
it,
not
feel it to get through it.
feel it. And I
All
know
of
that
the things
it's
you
hard.
don't want. You don't want to feel, but you got to do it. No
And I
doubt.
feel like there's sometimes where you can get stuck in that pain, and that's a good time to you know, shift so that you don't get swallowed up by it. But so it has to, for me, had to be in little bits, like sometimes it would be so overwhelming. I had to take a break. But that's how I found joy again, um, little by little, very slowly. But one of the things that my grief counselor helped me with was moving, physically moving. So instead of sitting there on the couch talking about how sad I was and despondent and gut wrench, we would walk in nature outside, and the sun and the mount. I happened to be blessed to live in a gorgeous place, so we would just walk and walk and walk and cry. But the movement of physically making your body move really helped me process it and let it was another, like, a next step, crying and then movement, and that was super helpful for me. Nature, being outside and talking and moving, and you know that was
They talk about changing your state, right? That when you get out of that place, like you said, you're on the couch, you're like, oh, you don't want to, but if you can just, make the move to get your body in motion, moving just a little, it literally changes the environment around you, which allows you to have that state change, which then you have different ways to look at it. Like you said, nature. Nature is just, it
amazing.
gave you, it fueled you up. And I believe just, walking with you, I can see that you still get so much from that. What else? What other? I know that you became very passionate about that little poochin in your arms. When did this kind of passion and you realizing, hey, I need to do a little bit more than just what I'm doing? When did that start to happen?
Wow. Well, I think there were a couple steps. One, I all of a sudden was very fascinated with death and the other side and what happens when you leave your body. So I got really passionate about learning about that veil and what energy does when it leaves your body. So I believe energy just changes shape. It doesn't ever disappear. So I knew when Hansi's physical body died, he was still his essence was still so powerful. And people would call me and say, I had this dream or I had this experience or all these things. So one quick story. So one a beautiful thing about my darling husband and our marriage was he was an artist in all ways, as I mentioned. So in we both loved coffee. I love coffee. So in the morning, he would come up to my bed. He'd get up really early. He was an early riser, and he would make bring me a coffee. But it wasn't just a coffee, Hillary. It was a cappuccino with a heart in the foam on the top.
Oh.
Like that was just his thing.
Oh.
He would just that's just how he was. So in the morning, I would wake up like a little girl excited for my latte with my heart on the
Mhm.
every single morning. And I looked so forward to it. Like I would just wait. And it would just be the most delicious way to start the day. So when he died, one of the things I missed so much was this cappuccino. And you can't just tell people, I miss him the cappuccino because it was about so much more. So I didn't talk about it, but it was very real in my world. Every morning when I wake up, it would remind me he's gone because I didn't have my
But you didn't have it.
beautiful gifts. So during the first stages of being back home, people kept telling me, Kelley, you have to call Allison Daly. You have to call Allison Daly. And I didn't know her. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. They're like, she's with Pathfinders. It's grief counseling. I'm like, ugh, I can't. No, no, thank you. So I didn't. Well, what I didn't know is everyone was calling her saying, you've got to call Kelley Brenninger.
Mm.
And she was like, I need her to reach out to me. She has to want to, right? So people were bringing us all these things. And sometimes you just didn't want to face whoever was at your door. So the kids and I had this sort of turned into a game that a car would pull into our driveway or a knock at the door and we'd all duck and hide because we pretend we weren't there so that we didn't have to.
Mhm.
So it was like Pavlov's like literally knock boom. And so this happened for the longest time. We would just hide. So one morning I came downstairs and I was having a exceptionally hard morning and there was a knock at my door. And I don't know why, but I walked right up to the door and opened it and there was Allison Daly with a latte in her hand with a heart in the phone. And she said, Hansi told me to bring this to you. And I crumbled. Like, I didn't know her. Nobody knew this. This was our private thing. And I literally, at that moment, knew he was still here helping me. And he was still such a part of my life. And I just lost it, and she was kind of like, "What?" Like, she's like, "It's
No,
just
she
a
didn't
coffee," and
understand the
I'm like, "She's gonna"
significance. She didn't get
she
that
came
whole idea
in,
of the veil is so thin.
veil is so thin, and I could
Oh.
bore you all day with stories like this, and so she came in, P.S. We are best friends, we still see each other all the time, she's godsend, saved me, but that was sort of my first so then I talked to mediums and I went through the whole thing, and that gave me a lot of reassurance, and that made me feel such a different view on life. And what it really did was make me remember that being on this planet in these bodies is such a gift. And I don't want to waste this gift with not living life to the fullest and having full expansion. So I realized, how much he is supporting me and wants me to love and to laugh and to have joy and to be creative and to write. And I had an animal rescue foundation that I had well before Hansi passed. And I had taken a break from it because I needed the healing. And I dove back in and I found that giving back and being in gratitude were just two things that were another step in my healing process. And even today, if something is bringing me down or something sad, or I just had an incident happen, and if I can go to a place of gratitude, I think it's for me the fastest way to raise my vibration. Not to be too woo woo, but it just brings me back up and it makes me um, want to be in a new space, and not to waste any more time. Um,
You know what's really interesting with what you're saying, that whole veil conversation, and we talked about this that 2 years before my mom passed, I had a real, like, just, people say it's a hit, people say that, it's a download, whatever, but that I needed to understand more about energy and afterlife and death and what it all means. And thank thankfully that I was able to do that before my mom passed, because I I was very, like I said, I was comfortable with it. Yes, it was incredibly sad, but I did feel, as you said, that energy leaves the body. It just changes shape. And I loved how you said that, because I really felt the same thing. And when you talk about gratitude, I have a part of the company is I have this group of fantastic women, and this month I decided to do a early in the morning, and I grab my tea and I just go live in this group, and this is the gratitude month, and it's literally these little 5 minute, just very fast. And I thought about it today, and I'm like, you know to have that attitude of gratitude, is it needs to be stronger than your pessimism and your dissatisfaction. And if you can get there during the day where you have more of that gratefulness coming out, then you've had a really good day.
Well, and I think it 100% has to be authentic gratitude. It can't be, "Oh, I love life," when you don't love life. You have to find something that you're truly, authentically, with your heart, grateful for. So sometimes I go broad. If I'm like, I can't be that real and specific. So I'll wake up in the morning and I'll just say, I'm so grateful for my bed, or my
Mm.
soft sheets, or the sunshine, or this little puppy, or my dogs who are my besties. Something that's really truly brings me joy and gratitude. Because I tried that, like, oh, I'm grateful I had 20 years with Hans, which I am, but there's sometimes I'd be like, yeah, but I got gypped out of, the next 40 or whatever. So I found that was an interesting
That's a
uh,
great
and
example. You
important.
you have, it's that teeter-totter, it's that polarity, it's that, well, yeah, I have this much time with them, but I wanted that much time.
Yeah. So
And
you have to
that's where
find
that
that.
one little thing on that other side of the gratefulness, just to make the day, because it is so easy to go to that, like, oh, side, this sucks and this is terrible and I just want it and why is this happening?
And the other thing that I would be remiss by not bringing up, because it has been key, instrumental for me personally, is meditation. I meditated lightly before Hansi died, but now I am I it is part of my life. It can be 10 minutes. It doesn't have I don't sit there and, zen pose for hours a day by any means. I went through that phase. I mean, I had to kind of go through the journey, but now in fact, I have this awesome group of college friends. There's six of us, and when this COVID hit, we started Zooming, and just to kind of have a connection when we were all on lockdown. And so, one of my girlfriends, Sydney, and I both were into meditation every day. And it didn't have to be talked about, but we just did, our Deepak Chopra or Esther Hicks or whatever. And so we brought it up to this group. And so the six of us then started doing one of the Deepak challenges. And then
Mhm.
every week we would meet and talk about it. And we are still doing it. And it is like been this amazing, fun connection of these college friends that now we're all on our different paths and different journeys, and we're getting different things, but we're all connected in a whole nother kind of deeper way. And it's been super fun. So
Love that. And
yeah.
have you found that when you first started, it was a little bit, it was a little out there, and you were like, "Ugh, this feels uncomfortable. This feels awkward."
You have no idea, Hillary.
I was
The
like,
Soul
okay.
Summit in Scottsdale, Arizona, to learn about life after that. I mean, I've been on a journey, let me tell you, and finding what works. But and there's some stuff that works and some that doesn't. But once you find your path, it's such a good way for me to reset my mind and to get in a quiet space. And I find a lot of creativity happens in that quiet space.
Absolutely. I find myself
Download it.
now
When
like
you said
I
download,
want
it's like all of a sudden I'll be like,
yeah,
ding, ding, ding. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do this, or oh, that's the right person for this, or whatever. Sorry, little poochin, I'm moving around too much. Anyway, it's been. I find that's super fun.
but now I find I would spend more time in meditation if I could. I mean, I love it.
You can do.
Like
I
I'm like,
love it.
it's the greatest place
Even if I'm
ever.
traveling, I will find a spot in my
Totally.
hotel room. I will go outside. Like my AirPods are my best friend. I just pop those in and I can go
Oh,
anywhere. It's
I am
so fun.
telling you. I'm like, I'm just excited. I'm going to be getting on a plane today and I'm thinking, oh, that's going to be an hour of just me like being able to shut my eyes. And I'm like excited about it. So I agree. But let me tell you, that did not happen overnight. I mean, that has been, a journey for me as well. So, okay. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up and
We
it's
can talk all
so,
day. I know.
I mean, and we do. And so I'm like, okay, so I want to know how can people find you, support you, love up this little poochin in your arms if there's, a means for donation
You're
around the
so
two
dear.
little surgeries
Oh, yes.
where, and I will put this in our show notes so that
Yes.
people can whether it's, I know that this pup is going to need surgery here in the next 3-4 months, but
Yeah.
then but but then other dogs and others, so no matter these shows live into perpetuity, so I want to make sure people can always get in touch with you and your calling and
So grateful. That is beyond words, dear. I'm a founder of Lucky Day Animal Rescue of Colorado, and it started as a little grassroots, just a few of us that were animal lovers, and it has grown into an amazing organization that I'm executive director, president of, and I couldn't be more proud of our team and our work. And one of the things we do is adoptions, and this little guy came from a breeder. They were going to euthanize him because he has two bad knees, but he has the most delightful personality and presence and joy, joy, joy. Everyone that meets him just wants to eat him up because look at him.
so
There he is. So he needs $6,000 to $8,000 worth of surgeries, two knees, a bent femur. So we have funds, that we set aside for special cases. So luckydayrescue.org is our website, and there's donations. That is our biggest help. We have a senior dog that spent 9 years in a shelter in a 6x9 metal cement pen. And we pulled him out, and now he's soaking in the sun and sniffing and loving life. So he had a lot of medical needs and issues that so we do try to help the special needs ones when we can. Our one caveat is we don't take aggressive dogs, so there's so many special needs ones that we try to sneak in as much as we can, especially when he's sleeping right now, but I promise you he's like puppy
oh,
love.
he's so cute. Okay, so that was luckydogrescue.org.
Lucky Day.
Lucky day. Lucky
Res-
day. Lucky dog.
Lucky Day, it gets
Lucky
confusing.
day.
Yep,
Luckydayrescue.org.
this is my logo. Can you see that?
Oh,
So that's my dog,
yeah. Oh,
little
I love
black dog. So yeah, and it's Lucky Day rescue.org is our website.
and
So
again, we'll put
I'll share
that
it with you.
into the show notes. And Kelley, I
And this
mean,
little guy needs a home.
and we'll put a
Saying
picture. We'll put a picture too.
hypoallergenic.
We'll put a picture.
Perfect.
So cute. But I just want to say thank you. I mean, I'm just so blessed to have you as a friend, and I'm glad that we're connecting here. And I'm glad to be able to share your story with so many people because I know that there are a lot of people that this resonated with your courage and your inspiring words and some of the things that you said really hit home for me too. So thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
And
I'm happy to help anyone in any way I can. If there's anyone that needs to talk or go through it, I'm always here. So thank you, Hillary.
absolutely.
Can't wait
Thanks.
to hike again.
Me too. Thanks again, Kelley.
All right. Have a good week.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you felt a connection to this episode of the Silver Lined Relaunch, please head over to iTunes now It would mean so much to me if you would leave a good review and help others find silver linings as well. And don't forget, you can have immediate access to all of the bonuses and notes from the show today in our treasure chest, which you have access to for free by texting 55444 and typing in treasure chest. Or you could go to our private Facebook group, The Relaunch Effect, Living a Life You Love. Together we've hit the reset button for you, turning your transitions into a transformation. Until next time, don't forget, there's always a silver lining.